Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Specific Data and Strategy podcast. With us today, we have Olesen-Bagneux, author of the Enterprise Data Catalog upcoming book by O'Reilly. We're going to talk a bit about the book and about data catalog and data governance in practice and in theory. We also have with me in the office Josef Höllwerth, who is an expert in data management and data architecture. Welcome. Happy to have you in the office.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, the Enterprise Data Catalog is just coming up soon, I think, hot off the press. And we're, looking forward to reading it. But maybe we can start this discussion by talking a little bit about the book. It says improve data discovery, ensure data governance, and enable innovation. And I'm very interested in what's the innovation part, right? The discovery and the governance I can understand. Can you please give us a little bit of insight about how introducing an enterprise data catalog can help companies enable innovation?
Yes, thank you, Ivo, for the question and for having me on here. I think, I think it's a good place to start. Actually, the innovation part of the subtitle is something that I have very dear at heart. I think it's actually one of the most important things in my book and about data catalogs in general. And so to explain it in a simple way, I think we can all relate, every one of us that works in data in some shape or form, right? We can all relate to these stories about the data scientist using a lot of his or her time in just finding and preparing data to do analytics on, to do data science on, basically. I think like very, very basically, that the data catalog helps drive forward innovation by making data discoverable at an enterprise level. And what that means is that you get some of the most highly paid, some of the most skilled employees that you have in your company that are typically data scientists. They get the chance to do their data science on the most important or the most relevant, the most useful data in the organization. So if you're a small organization, say below 100 or 200 people, it's not very difficult to navigate that. You pretty much know everyone. You're located in one building or like buildings that are very close by. You know the face of everyone in the company. But very soon after that limit, a company begins to grow in size in a way that makes it a little difficult to discover data sources. And the bigger the company, the more data sources, and the more data sources, the more difficult it becomes to assess really what's most important, what's most useful, what could we use for developing new software solutions, or just doing like predictive analytics and so on. And it's in that regard that I think that the data catalog really can help you, right? Because basically it exposes data sources at a metadata level, and that is just something very useful in pretty much all use cases for that have an innovative purpose of some sorts.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, you by combining this knowledge together in a quicker way and finding it, you could just do more with it. It's as simple as that. One question we had was about the data information knowledge wisdom pyramid. Maybe Joseph, you can.
Yeah. I was curious about this. We always speak about the evolution of data becoming information and becoming knowledge in the best case. I was curious what role can play the data catalog in this field and this evolution of the value of data?
Yeah, so another great question, and thank you, Joseph, for that one. Actually, in my book, I discuss it a little differently. I also use like a model to describe how data is turned into information, but I don't use the pyramid that you refer to that like culminates in wisdom. Instead, I use this relatively or just a simple figure called the DCAR model, which is data, information, knowledge, action, and reaction or result. I discussed that in the latest part of my book, and really how I see it is something. Yeah, it's something very simple. I mean, this model is very, very simple, but if you want to go through it, like um, inf data becomes information when it is interpreted by someone, a human being, right? Someone sees, okay, this is this is customer information, for example, um, and then as that interpretation proceeds, that information becomes knowledge when this person understands something very specific about this information. Now, this is very interesting customer information because it seems as if this customer has tried to purchase this product from our website several times, even though there's some bug that has prevented the customer from purchasing it. The customer keeps on returning and so on. Just as an example, right? Something in this interpretation at some point culminates into knowledge, specific knowledge about this information, where we do not only recognize what the kind of information the data is, but where it turns into knowledge. But from that point on, what I argue with reference to library and information science, which is my background, I have a PhD in that field, is that instead of thinking about the next stage as wisdom, I more see the knowledge element as something that will allow you to simply perform an action of some sort, to do something with the knowledge you have. Typically, that is what you do, right? You launch an initiative, you fix the bug on the web page so that the customer can actually purchase the product, or whatever it is. You perform some kind of action and you get some kind of result out of that. So so that is how I see this distinction between data becoming information, becoming knowledge, and then in my view becoming something that you act with. Not something that just makes you wiser, but something that you act with. That's something that will again create a result.
Right.
And
yeah,
okay.
now, I just wanted to add that, you know, we come from banking, right? I've worked extensively in banking for, you know, in exec functions and as consultants, and what we saw there was that, you know, with the fall of Lehman, right, a few years afterwards, they introduced this, you know, BCBS 39 legislation that was supposed to, you know, govern how you aggregate and report risk data in banking, critical data, and you know, all of these data governance and data catalog initiatives kind of, at least in the banking field, came about with a strong push from this direction, right? So it was a regulatory push that brought about this innovation. Since, you know, back at the time of Lehman, banks weren't able to tell, okay, where does this figure come from, right? You know, how is that different from something else that's in the annual report? And hopefully, you know, after, you know, a first or a second generation of these data catalog initiatives, you know, everyone has it in one field or you know, in one form or another. Maybe not as advanced, not with the latest tools, but my question to you was more in the direction of, okay, all right, data catalog tooling and its importance. You know, there's this open source coming from big tech, you know, like from Netflix or from LinkedIn, versus the proprietary tools like, you know, to not mention them per name, but there's a bunch of them. And there's a metadata management as an add-on built in indirectly in the databases or other tools. I know that tooling is maybe not the most important aspect, but how important is it to ensuring that, or you could say, well, the concepts are important and the tools don't matter. What's your view on this tooling question in data catalogs?
Yeah, I like that question, Ivo. I have been setting up a small consultancy called Searching for Data. In the light of me writing the book, I have had a lot of people reaching out, and I tend to do two things with this. And I do this in my spare time, and then I'm an enterprise architect in my daily work, so it's my spare time or part-time activity. And I both work with data catalog vendors and data catalog customers. And I find that data catalog vendors, of course, they try to differentiate themselves. They wanna promote themselves as very, very unique. And I honestly think that they also are unique. But I think that one of the problems is that you cannot really, as a customer, it's difficult to distinguish what is just sales noise and what is actually the uniqueness of these technologies. And so I try to bridge that. And I feel like being completely honest here. I think my company, this is not something I have to live off, but I think my company will become a small success. But I am sometimes in doubt because what I want to do with this small activity of mine is to bridge and really explain the distinct capabilities of the different technologies out there. And I want to explain, okay, if you want to do this as a consumer of a data catalog, as a customer, if you want to do this, then this technology is perhaps interesting for you. And if you want to do that, then this technology is very good. And so there's a lot of different scenarios where different sorts of technologies play a role, right? And
Right.
you can cut that in many different ways. But to provide a high level picture, or perhaps two high level pictures, then the first one is that depending on your tech stack, you could consider using a data catalog that is native to the tech stack you have. For example, that belongs to the cloud provider that you're primarily a customer by. Or if you have a big platform, not necessarily an entire cloud provider, but a big platform that you run a big part of most of your company via, then you could consider using that platform data catalog. You could also, if you really have a big and very diverse IT landscape, then I definitely think that it's worth considering like distinct data catalog platforms or data platform technologies that mainly focus on data catalogs. So
where you
that's
can
one
integrate all of the data and kind of bring this disparate landscape together, to describe it, to describe the objects, etc.
And so that's one dimension that you could consider, like from a technological perspective. And the other dimension is like what's your purpose here? If you want to have a data observability approach to data catalogs, then there are certain tools out there, streaming-based tools, that are very, very interesting to look at because they will allow for you to get a data observability kind of data catalog. That is a quite expensive solution, but it's definitely something that you would want to consider, for example, in banking, where you come from, Ivo, because live data is quite important in the banking sector, right? In other sectors, it's not very important. In some sectors, it's not important at all. But then there would be other things to consider, right? For example, do you want to do a very distinct mapping of the data that you have in your company? You have data catalogs out there that allow for flexible meta modeling. Now that's an acquired taste, but if you want to do that, there are knowledge graph data catalogs out there that are really, really cool that you can do that with. You got to know how to do that. It's not for everyone, but it's definitely something that I personally find very interesting. And then, of course, you could also look into technologies that are more focused on on-premise solutions. Now, there's a lot of on-premise bashing, and I, for one, have also bashed on-premise solutions quite a lot. But like recently, a CEO that I have been that I have been chatting with a lot, and I won't mention his name. He kind of made me think of this in
Don't worry, this podcast is not very popular, so even if you did,
I will make it popular. I will make it popular. No worries. I think he made me think of this in a different way. I mean, a lot of, and it's true even for the company that I work in today. That like you cannot just claim that on-premise technology is something of the past that we need to get away from. On-premise technology runs factories. Man. You can't take the on-premise technology out of a factory. It's impossible. It's embedded in the machines. I mean, you can't do that. So it's actually a quite naive assumption to think that we all should put everything in the cloud. And that was kind of an epiphany for me. And anyway, there are catalogs out there that are really, really good at on-premise also.
Yep.
So if that is a scenario for you, then you should consider it not as something that you have to accept, but something that is actually the best way to run your business. And that is also so that is the last. So there were these two sections depending on your tech stack and depending on what you want to do with the catalog. That's kind of the two dimensions I see.
Right. So maybe we could talk a little bit. Come back to your book, and can you tell us a little bit about how it came about, how it's structured, what are the interesting things that we'll be able to see? I mean, we pre-ordered it, but we haven't had a chance to touch the paper just yet. So maybe you could do a little intro.
Yeah, thank you, Eva. Definitely, and thank you for purchasing the book. It's to be published in mid-February. I don't know when this podcast will air, but we're in mid-January now. So in a month from now, the book will be published, and it has three parts. My book has three parts. It has a part that's called "How You Organize Data Defines How You Can Search It." That's a big part. It's a little heavy. It's the first part. Then there's a part that's called that's about data democratization, how data catalogs cater for data democratization, and finally there's a future part. This discusses the future of data catalogs, and so
I have just to point out, because I'll come back to data democratization, because I think some data citizens they'd rather not live in a democracy of data. They'd rather live in
in a fascist in a data dictatorship.
They don't in a data dictatorship, exactly. They don't like to have the choice, because with the choice. But sorry, just had to.
No, that's a very good point. Don't be sorry. And that's exactly one of the dilemmas, right? That you want to have. It's a big thing, right? Like how democratized a structure do you want? Like centralized monopoly dictatorship is easy, but it's not very scalable, right? So the big thing here is that, like, if you want to have a scalable data management approach, a data mesh approach, these kind of like more modern, flexible, open approaches, then a dictatorship really won't get you any far. I mean, you can remain in control, but you can never scale, and that's the big problem that old industrial companies have, right? They have these old monopolistic, monolithic architectures that simply can't scale, right? And that's what I discuss in the middle part of the book. Like, how does a data catalog allow to discover, access, and manage data, but at scale, right? If you want to do something at scale, then a data catalog is actually a super cool tool, because it will allow you to gain an overview of all the data that you have in your company at a metadata level. So it's really a useful tool if you want to do a scalable data management approach, like not one data warehouse, but but many, one perhaps even for each domain,
Mhm.
then the data catalog is actually a very useful tool because it will expose all those data warehouses or lakes or whatever you have out there, right? And that is why the data catalog is quite useful in that regard. But not all companies need that. They do not necessarily need a scalable data management approach. Again, it's a thing of size and whatever you produce, right? We cannot all be startups in San Francisco. Not not necessarily, right? And
Oh, let's not go there rabbit hole. We could talk for hours about where this is heading. It's a subject of another discussion I'd very much like to to
yeah,
talk about. But you're
yeah, why
fully
not?
right. It's a very, especially, oftentimes in banking, we consultants close to advising bank, they come out and say, well, we just walked 1 meter, and then they will show you just a super nice slide deck of how they walked a mile,
Mm,
of how they run a marathon. And if you look at the substance behind it, it's like, honestly, guys, we could have just done it on our own. I mean, a lot of this is so much hype, except with the few exceptions that are highly exceptional, top world companies. But
mm-hmm.
the rest, if you consider the entire set, there's so much to, scrutinize and not, now that the whole VC stuff mostly dried up, they it's reality check time. Yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, you're
yeah.
right, very different. I mean, in Europe we have a different approach. Oftentimes they'll be like, oh, you guys are so slow, so bureaucratic. Yeah, but we have structure, and and we also approach data architecture and also the life cycle of data initiatives with a totally different timeline. And
Mm,
just to add kind of a question to the question here that I'm thinking of as you mentioned this, when you set up like a data catalog for, let's consider a classic European, industrial company, you're most likely you should most likely plan. Is it correct to assume that you should most likely plan that the data management data catalog software should outlive the life cycle of the particular data warehouse, data lake, data whatever system that it's mostly governing, where some of the domains are? You should have like a longer horizon for its lifetime than the horizon of the actual underlying, data domain. How what's your view on that? Like, because if you
yeah,
say, well, we're going to invest in new, in a new BI tool, whatever tool, new data warehouse, even, well, we're going to probably, we're going to take a year to set it up, and it probably should run for 5 years. But if I consider that I'm setting up the overall governance tool, it should probably run for longer, right?
definitely. You said that you just purchased the book and you haven't had the chance to browse through the pages, but something tells
Oh,
me
that's in
you've
there.
been
So mhm.
something tells me you've been taking a sneak peek. But I have an entire chapter on life cycles actually, and I think that
Awesome,
question.
awesome. This,
I think that
yeah.
question is very, it's very, very relevant what you're asking. And I have never been in banking. I come from the pharmaceutical industry. I mean,
Pharma. Okay.
yeah, I come from pharma, but I guess it's even more regulated. It's like very, very highly regulated. It's a totally different ecosystem, right? You have billions and trillions of transactions going on all the time in banking. It's a totally different setup technology-wise. But pharma is just super, super slow, right? We have this 10-year long value chain where we test it in preclinical trials, we test it in clinical trials, we test it in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then finally we get the approval. And after 10 years, we can begin saving lives of patients, right? Because it's so highly regulated. And that is how it has to be. But given that background, like that, my as a practitioner, that has given me a big understanding of the importance of life cycles, and so I have an entire chapter about that because it's so delicate, right? Life cycles is very, very delicate. Data has life cycles. IT systems has life cycles, and the metadata repositories where you represent these things and also have life cycles, and everything is connected and everything messes up. Like when you do a data migration, I'm pretty sure you must have seen that, Carl. It's Evo many times, right? That like you do a data migration and then or you sunset a system, and then the data migration just goes haywire because people haven't planned for the complexity of data while the system was running. There was no maintenance of the data lifecycle while the system was running. And so when you are supposed to sunset it and migrate data, you don't know what has to survive, what has to be deleted, how is this even structured, and like it's a very, very difficult.
It's a write-off. Well, very often it's a write-off. You just have to figure it out. There's very little you can take and kind of move forward to the new system with respect to this metadata description. There's very
exactly,
probably have some old PDF of some data model if you're lucky.
Yeah, and
if someone took the time.
Yeah, exactly, and so that's where I think the data catalog needs to be implemented in a way, at least in highly regulated industries, right? Where you have to think about this beforehand and think about the structure that you apply in the data catalog will be applied at the physical level. Like it's a system, we call it metadata, but it is data. It is a database and so on. But the physical layer has to be able to disappear without the conceptual layer disappearing.
Right. You still have to take care of the lineages, right? I mean, one of the interesting things in these data catalogs is you do, you always said we can do full automation, but any automation is good compared to Big Four consultants saving PowerPoints with your data lineage, and that's your data lineage description.
Yeah.
If they took the time, so that's also conditional that someone ever took the liberty to do this. In banking, more or less, this is under good scrutiny now. This was back in the day. Now it's more like under control, but it's still not automated in a way that you would like to have it in a tool that basically covers all your data assets and knows, from with high precision from source to report how the data came about. And in regulated industries, this is a key question, right? You can't steer a bank unless you have confidence that in the figures of your risk management that the data came about in a way that it represents the truth, right? And and here's what,
but maybe for that reason, this is why some regulations are often an advantage, because then you don't have any chance not to do it. This is the same with this GDPR thing. Before you have GDPR, nobody would never skip any data in any time. If you ask, do we still need this data? Nobody would say no. And now you are forced by law to delete at least some data, and everybody sees that nothing really dramatic is happening when you from time to time skip parts of your data, because you will need it no longer. So this is the advantage of this of regulated industries in some way.
Yeah, for example, I mentioned this BCBS 239. They should have given it a better name, by the way. BCBS 239 is just not a great brand marketing for this, because if you actually read it, it really reads like a well-written, general best practice approach to accuracy, completeness, all of these principles. So it's like a very good piece of, it's an excellent piece of regulation that applies to much more than banking. And and this was definitely a regulatory push that drove up, people thinking about, lineages, thinking about ensuring all these aspects of the data. And the problem with these initial implementations was that people were expecting regulations to be very precise, like a technical standard, but it actually is just a best practice approach. How do I ensure completeness, accuracy, timeliness, and about my data? How do I control it? Well, it could mean a lot. It could be done in many different ways, and so it's it again comes back to, as you mentioned, your particular industry and what you apply. You can take an easy tool and control it, at the access points. You can overdo it. You can easily overdo it, especially if you get consultants. They will advise you that no, the regulator will want this to be super duper overdone, which in fact they do not, right? They require you to have thought about what this means for your particular data, right? and there's a huge amount of I guess technical and organizational measures that you can take to improve this. And that's what I mentioned, how the initial data catalogs came about, right? In most of those banks, right? And so I actually wanted to talk to you about is you also in your experience as a practitioner in your practice, some of these, let's consider a data catalog project. What does consider, let's take the pharma industries. I don't have a lot of exposure to it. What does a real life enterprise catalog implementation look like? What's the main value of it? How would you sell it to a to a decision maker where you believe that they have a need and they should be investing in reimagining their enterprise data catalog?
Yeah, so there are two answers at least to this, Ivo. I think Josef just touched upon lineage and the blessing that regulations sometimes are, right? I think that is very true, Josef. I've been experiencing that as well. In pharma, I'd say that it's actually not very pharma specific, at least not the first part of my answer. But there are kind of two angles to this. I see. The first angle is that, as in any other industry, many data catalogs are driven by use cases, and it's actually something that I kind of don't like that reality. It is very much the reality that drives forward data catalogs in practical life. But the thing that I don't like about it is that it opens up the possibility of several catalogs in the same company. Imagine that reality on the web. Like, you could only do, if you want to do 1/3 of the web, you would have to go to Google. But then if you want to do the remaining 20%, the 20% of the remaining part, then you would have to go to this other search engine, and so on and so forth, right? It's just, it's not the way you want to go about it. So basically, I am quite aware that I am promoting a view, and I am very honest about that. I am promoting a view where you would actually consider the data catalog a monolith, but it's just not. It's not a monolith. The monolith really becomes,
it's a centralized repository of some sort, and you have to bring it. The classical example, if I just say in the banking, is that where you don't want to have is to have your risk, to have your, like, every division total data autarky, and you have the risk people with their own data warehouse, the finance people with their own data warehouse, the marketing people, they anyway have their own data warehouse, and we don't need to consider them. They always have their thing. And then probably have some other operations people that are scrambling with some data to do some real-time use cases, and they also have a data warehouse. And I would say, well, if you bring in a data catalog, we obviously have to unite the assets of all these guys under one hood, and then start kind of untangling all the duplications, all of their similar but not really true, similar parameters. Maybe the difference is just the values that this thing receives, but it's called the same variable. And then suddenly you dive into this huge complexity of having to bring these people together in order to solve this, right? In order to take part in, in filling this data catalog. My question to you is, data owners and data stewards, obviously someone has to use this, mention at scale. This isn't done by IT, where IT starts, filling in the catalog. It's actually the exact opposite. IT should just,
definitely.
Not how. Where's the difficulty with, motivating data owners to do their job? Put it in a blunt podcast style.
Yeah. It is like the big elephant in the room, right? I think you're completely right in asking this question, Ivo. I want to answer it, but I just want to answer it in this way, and please just push more, Ivo, if you want more out of me. But I think that, like, I'm thinking about if I were to write another book, I don't know if I will. It's exhausting, and if you have a full-time job, it's pretty hard. But if I were to write another book, I think that one of the things that one of the things that happened this last decade or last 2 decades is that a lot of regulations emerged. Right, we got GDPR in Europe. We defined this idea of sensitive personal information, and it took the world by storm. Now the entire world is doing that. We also defined standards for information security, and that is also something that is applied on a global scale. And we will keep doing that, and they will be more and more strict. And so what we saw the last couple of decades is the rise of a lot of tools trying to address these regulations, and they are very much alike. An information security management system is very, very much like a personal information management system or privacy information management system, and so on. And we have these many metadata repositories that are very much alike, and yet they are distinct for the part of the business wherein they are located. And I hope that one of the things that will come out of this economic downturn is that everyone in the data field takes a deep breath, looks each other in the eyes and say, okay now, we gotta stop doing the exact same thing in 10,000 different systems. Let's try to unite forces here. Let's not try to do a dictatorship. That's not what I'm saying. Not at all. But let's try to unite our forces so that the Chief Information Security Officer is not doing the exact same thing as the Data Privacy Officer or the Data and Analytics Chief Officer, or all these titles that are trying to do the same thing with different tools and mapping the world as they see it, each of them doing it differently so that we get a big cacophony in the end, right? I really, really hope that that will end. Not because we need a dictatorship, but just because we need to spend our money a little more rationally than we are doing. There's an army of vendors out there, and they want to sell us software to solve every single problem we have. But data is just something that goes across domains, that goes across functions, and we shouldn't treat it as something that is not like that, because it's not. And so that is something that I really hope. And in that regard, to answer your question in the I guess in the longest way possible.
No,
I think that I would very much argue against the usage of use case based approaches to data catalogs. Like, I don't want to warn against it. I would be sympathetic to support that kind of approach and opening up. But I really think that if you want to persuade stakeholders, you need high level engagement, like from the C-suite or just below the C-suite. People that understand that we should do this once and for all, not to apply a dictatorship of very, very strict master data, but simply because we need to stop doing the same things in so many
over duplication and over redundancy of data.
It's a waste of money. It's not very effective, and it's also like it's not very satisfying for the people that are forced to do this. I have seen consider the average tenure for chief data officers. It's so short, right? And my personal,
but to be honest, I don't believe in the chief data officer position the way as far as if it's about governance and management, yeah, I can live with that. But in the chief data officer, in terms of this person is gonna make a non-data culture company very data-like, no, these guys have a very hard time. And as you mentioned, the chief tenure is very, very low. And it's just such an unthankful job for the people involved. It's a painful experience to see. But Joseph had a question.
Yeah, I was just thinking on this. What is said about this giving up this redundancies with all the different functions and I totally agree with you, but I have a little fear that this could be the same thing like with the data democracy. It would be very nice to have, but I have the fear that there will come much resistance from the guys who have the power with their own little dictatorships, as you said.
The little data kingdoms. Let's call them the data kingdom instead of the data
Kingdoms,
domains. Yeah,
it's better than dictatorship.
Yeah, but
you have to open up your data kingdom for access from the outside.
we have a lot
No,
of yeah, that is true. Josef, you will get that kind of pushback. I think that many companies though will be. I don't know for the banking sector. I'm not sure, but I see innovations happening in that space as well. That is kind of doing at least some disruption, but it is a very stable sector. But I see the necessity for moving away from those small kingdoms as something that is a prerequisite if you want to scale and if you want to stay relevant in the decades to come.
oh, absolutely.
Simply because you would need to, I mean, in the banking sector, you would need to do more small like apps or software as a service solutions to provide for more smoother experience when using money simply. That requires more flexible and more scalable data architecture. Can't do that with a centralistic approach where everything piles up in a backlog of demands that has to be handled by a very little team sitting on one technology. It won't scale. And so those kingdoms, they need to, they to some degree need to go, but it's a fine balance that you have to strike. And I am too much of an academic to say that you should just do that. I can definitely also see the other side of this, and I think you're right, Josef, in pointing out that moving towards this complete democracy is a nice ideal, but just having like this happy-go-lucky approach towards that, abandoning all the rules that we built in our small kingdoms, that would be not only risky but also just it would create dysfunctional processes throughout the value chain of your company very quickly. So it's really something that needs to be balanced very carefully. I totally agree.
Yeah, but also consider also you're talking. The title of the book is that it starts with discovery, and what does that really mean? That means that everyone or more people in the organization will be able to utilize this as part of their overall skills to work with data. And let's face it, not everyone has the skills yet, right, within the company. A lot of people rely on reports created by other people instead of doing them themselves because they just like the skills, or like the skills to do it in a complexity that is oftentimes required beyond, just looking at standard figures and doing a bit of Excel. So to be honest, that requires upskilling from everyone, right? So as you retool, you upskill, and then you can say, well, then you can really say, oh, well, if everyone is using the data catalog, that's really the contingency. How many people are actually going to start using it? To discover fields, to dig into data, to correct wrong descriptions, to say, well, we have like, I don't know, let's take a field like say in banking, exposure, favorite. Well, we have 5 versions of it that mean slightly different things. Where I want the third version that is described this and that way, but not the other. This is of a complexity. I think that, as you say, if you want to stay relevant in the next decade, well, you have to up your game if you're just a user, and if you're on the technology side, well, you better make sure that the entire process runs and encompasses all of the relevant assets that you should have. I fully agree with you that there may be specialized cases, as you mentioned, where just describe metadata in a separate area. It shouldn't be this one thing, the data catalog for everyone, but it is but it still would be the same approach to actually cataloging your data, even if it's a second tool for idiosyncratic purpose that does not relate with analytics. Like it's just the security space and not the overall analytics. But we got carried away. I wanted to get back to this more interesting, at least for me, aspect of this data catalog projects is, do they fail often? How do they fail? How to have them not fail? If we want to take this idea described by the book and actually put it into life, right? Let's say for a bank, for an insurance company, for classic organization, industry producing organization. What do you think is the critical aspects to consider? You mentioned about arguing the value with the C-suite. Yeah, that's that's easier said than done.
that is easier said than done. And I think so you can definitely,
you have to define it just practical to make it more practical. You say, okay, well, let's have a data catalog. Fine, we have to define the data owners, right? Who owns the data? And oftentimes you'd have to make some people that aren't usually in the front of this suddenly think about describing metadata about some of the underlying stuff that they work with. There'll be people directly from the front lines, right? You have to bring these guys in and have them understand and support you in doing this. Where you see difficulties or issues, and what's your just experience in bringing these data owners people on board?
I have actually done it. I have actually done it. I have run through. I was employed at a big pharmaceutical company once where we did this, and I guess you would call it a data catalog. It was like it's called a records and information management tool. So it was a little bit a blend of data, but also physical mediums such as paper, but not only paper, also like specimen. So like it could be tissue, or it could even be small parts of animals and so on. And then we had a billion trillion. Like we had a lot of data, right? Right. So it was a bit of everything, and we actually did it. We rolled out a system that covered the entire company. At that point, it was 33,000 people. We identified domain owners, data owners in all the domains. We had a lot of back and forth with them, and when I joined that company, I was in the beginning of my career, so I was like front office, like doing support stuff, academic support stuff, but nonetheless support stuff. And people would yell at me, and I would get insulted by people that were very, very angry.
So you're telling me I have to do all of this, and then what's in it for me?
Yeah. So
and you're like, I don't know. Users can see what you described.
At that point, what we used was like, in this case, there are two tools. There's a carrot and a stick. And in that case, we used the stick. We had the authority to use the stick, so we used the stick. And when you do that, you get a lot of screaming, but it worked. I have never seen a project go on a global scale solely based on a carrot. I have never seen it. That is not to say that it doesn't exist. I have just not seen it.
There may be some unicorn where this was the case. In all the cases, percentage completion in an email to the board, and you see immediately how people are like, okay, where do I log in? What do I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe I'm naive on this point, but I'm pretty sure that the results will be better when there is some intrinsic motivation of people doing this, because they understand what is their benefit of having this. What is the benefit for the whole company? That is not some playing around tool for IT. It is a huge benefit for the whole
absolutely
company.
Absolutely. And especially if you combine it with as part of a well-articulated data roadmap, and you say, well, you guys, we're doing that now, but we're also doing, I don't know, a new data store, a new whatever we're changing. So just to kind of animate them to be part of this change, right? Because let's face it, if you're not changing, if you're not progressing, upgrading your data landscape, well, it's going to decay in a few years and you're going to be back to
life cycle management, right? I have a little trick, Ivo and Josef, that I want to share. And that is when you're considering a data catalog, And if you're considering one of the new ones out there, like Crisp New, then if you encounter a particular kind of argument, then you should consider going with another tech provider. And that argument is that we have seen so many data catalogs in the past, and they have failed tremendously because the user adoption was very, very low. And we believe that with our technology, we will get a lot of user adoption. And here's why. If that is the main selling point of a new technology that you're considering, I advise you.
That's a very good point.
I advise you to watch out a little, because it's not the technology failing, it's the culture, and everyone everyone should be aware of that. Now, if a vendor has something very specific that they want to promote as part of a new capability technologically, then there is a place for that vendor. But if the sole reason is to bash the existing vendors based on the percentage of failed data projects that those vendors represent, I would advise you to watch out a little, because that is not a very serious reason to introduce new technology. A lot of very established vendors out there, again, we agreed to not mention names, so I won't, but I'm thinking of like these big old data catalog players. They work just fine. There's nothing wrong with those.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with those solutions. So think about that.
I've seen it implemented in German banks, but that's just anecdote. Like when you shop for a data field, and it's like the whole process is like applying for a new driver's license at the DMV. Until you get to your field, you're basically just giving up because they overcomplicated it in such a way. You know, it doesn't have to be that. This is basically how to install 3 toll gates for you before you can discover your data, right? So let's block discovery of the data by making you to go through this painful process. But you've, jokes aside, you're fully right that the especially since so many open source initiatives are spinning up from various big tech companies, commercial vendors would likely want to just cover the breadth in terms of technologies, but also really focus on how to improve this adoption, and that's a very tough question, very, very tough problem to solve. Yeah, and also considering that not everyone that's using those catalogs, and not even people that are setting them up, right, they themselves would need the expertise how to best utilize those tools, right? No one comes out as a even we having a simple degree in IT doesn't really make you an expert into information management in a way that you'd like to utilize best such a solution, especially considering a longer term life cycle that it has to have. So it's not like an investment where you're saying, you guys, well, we'll just play with this tool, and then next year we'll bring in another one, and then we'll just continue until undefined period. It's more likely we have to have, like, it's one of those things where really you don't do it an agile way. You think about it, you plan carefully, analyze it, and then you decide on a plan. Because I'd argue the data warehouse, we could just redo the building and make it from a metal construction into a brick and mortar construction or whatever other construction. But it's like that with the data catalog, I probably like to stick to a more stable fundament going forward, and that would have to vary by company, right? We've looked in our practice. We've looked at open source tools, had a great experience. We've looked at, as you mentioned, some of these commercial tools. They're very good, especially if you take the time to understand, kind of the angle of the vendor and how they like it to be used. So that's kind of the key. Whether you are fitting really, I mean, that's how we cover 10 industries. Yeah, but you're likely built for 2 quite well, and the rest would just have to change their kind of like their model to work with you. Yeah. So yeah, that covers it for the data catalog project. Yeah, Josef, you're thinking of adding a question here?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. So maybe We've had this chat for a while. Where do you think this industry is going? Right. I mean, you also discussed on Joe's podcast. It was like a few months ago, I believe, on the future of the data catalogs. So, what do you think are some? I know it's in the book, likely, like where this whole industry is going, but just give us a little teaser here. What do you think? Um, you know, what's the hot thing to watch like for this future of data catalogs? What's the what's something that we're not there yet, but we're likely to get there yet? I mean, I'm thinking,
So
technology-wise, etc.
so I won't say chat GPT.
No, we've over chat GPT everywhere, but no, chat GPT is a must.
But no. I honestly, I'm very, very happy that I didn't mention it by name in my book. But I don't think that is the future of data catalogs. I mean, it could be a component for sure for unstructured data. It would be a cool component. I think there is at least one vendor that have already integrated some kind of artificial intelligence doing that in their data catalog. At least one. But you know what? I
starts with an A. We looked at it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the one.
It's very artificial. Let me put it this way.
That I could imagine, but I could imagine. I haven't looked at it. I've only seen commercials for it and like small videos. I haven't really tested the depth of it yet, but I know what you're thinking, what vendor you're thinking about, and So anyway, to get back to there's a lot of interesting points here, Ivo. I could talk another hour with you, but both of you, also you, Josef. And maybe for the listeners, I just want to say that I can't see Josef. The camera's facing Ivo.
Yeah, we're still very basic in terms of this podcast.
Yeah,
but trust us, we're gonna upgrade as we move on.
I can see you need us, so we are on the same page.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, let me just the future of data catalogs. I think something very important is to have an understanding of the knowledge of your company. I think data catalogs will move from being very focused on data to be very focused on knowledge, and really become this
this was your point,
knowledge repository of your company. Understanding. So there's so much history in companies, right? I work in a company right now that's 150 years old. It did stuff, technological stuff, 150 years ago. Wild stuff at its time, right? And so all that knowledge through all those decades, it doesn't really reside anywhere in companies. We're not like public institutions that have to keep a memory of what decisions were made at what point in time and so on. We do not have that memory. But I think that data catalogs will evolve into this enterprise memory portal where we can slowly begin to understand the past, and not only the data of the past, but also the knowledge of the past and the present. And of course, that will help us navigate the future. So that is actually what I envision. And I envision something where, like, if people are pushed towards what are the future of data catalogs, certain vendors out there, the more into the future you become, the more flashy it becomes, the more things are changing colors and moving, and like it's a very flashy experience and with a lot of buttons and a lot of functions. I actually think that as we progress in time in this decade, within this decade, by the end of this decade, I think that data catalogs will become more and more simple in the user interface. It will become more and more like a search engine, just a search bar where you can type stuff in, and then the experience that you will have when you open up your professional laptop at work, when you have taken that first cup of coffee and you sit down at your desk and you open your laptop and you go to the internet of your company, you will just have a search bar. You will not have this big intranet with a lot of papers or articles on what's happening, and there's a section saying all the easy links to get to your time registration or your I don't know, the menu for the canteen or whatever. Like, and there will not be a list of agreed upon terms, and you will not have a link to the SOP system, and there will not be articles about the strategy. There will be nothing of that. There will just be a search bar with your logo on top, and that's it. And that will be the data catalog of the future. Very, very.
Be able to make sense out of a lot of this unstructured data in a way that we're just scrambling to describe a couple of fields in a database and considering it as a success. But that's just very, very early in the that information, knowledge, wisdom.
It is, and imagining. Like I have some very concrete examples of what I imagine in the future. So, if example, there's a such example that I discuss by the end of my book, where people, when they type L, just the letter L, between 10:30 and 2 o'clock, something like that. I can't remember the figures. Then that auto completes with lunch, and the hits that are provided to you on top are the menus of the canteens closest to where you're sitting, so you can find out where you want to have your lunch. Stuff like that. Super, super simple search, but very, very powerful and effective and intuitive at a level where we're not used to discussing that kind of depth in the precision and recall and relevance mechanisms, basically, of how we search. And so I see that as something that will expand a lot in simple search, but definitely also in more advanced kinds of searches, doing searches with like Boolean operators and so on, but like just expanding a language of search that is not a database query language search, but just what we call an information retrieval query language that will allow you to search for a lot of stuff. And then that will, of course, also expand into graph relations and lineage relations and so on. But that is how I see the future of data catalogs, not as some fancy tool that can do like I am totally in the opposite belief that many vendors out there that wants to make it even more complex and even more like with a lot of stuff going on in the user interface. I believe that the
10,000 workflows, all of these things,
all
just
of the complex stuff. I believe that the
complex.
entire I believe in the entire different vision. It's just your company logo with a search bar underneath, and it will be very, very powerful. That's the difference. I think that all the complexity and the mechanisms, they have to take place behind the scenes. And there are certain data catalogs that I agree with this vision about, perhaps a lot. I don't know how many, but the problem is that it's a very, very difficult sell, right? If you just show that to people, people just go, nah, it's not interesting. It's just a search bar. I know that. But imagine, but imagine the reality of that. If you were in a company.
But then we come back to ChatGPT, right? You know, it's not about the ChatGPT itself, but the how we can utilize the underlying, the technology for using it within your. First of all, it's a technology that a catalog vendor would integrate. They don't develop a particular thing on their own, and then you can actually then use this tool. As what you're saying is that to catalog more than your very basic fields and objects, but kind of the knowledge and of the organization over time, and then make sense out of it in a way that you'd otherwise not be able to do at the moment, right? It would just not be feasible. So it's a very interesting topic to kind of I think it's a data catalog space is not exactly the most innovative and quick moving of the bunch. Let's put it this way. But we for a reason, and the reason is just the immense complexity of solving these problems. These aren't easy problems to solve. These are extremely hard problems to solve. And I know some of the vendors be like, "Well, if you connect this, if you connect your data and then you can enable your people to." Comment and and this and that, but these guys are just they're not even using SQL to query this data. They don't have the means for this. It's like giving them an electric car where they're used to riding a bicycle, right? So that great that you can do that, but the organization is not there yet. So that's also the problem, right? So and then it cannot fully utilize everything that the vendor thought about, in terms of functionality, in terms of capabilities for collaboration. It's just not fully realized, and then the business case doesn't come about. You're like, why should we be paying so much to keep this tool?
think that's a very
yeah.
classic problem in IT, right? That technology has been invented by technologists.
Yeah. What would you advise? A let's say what's the first question to ask if a company is thinking about introducing a data catalog and they don't have it, but let's assume they have the needed complexity and data teams and all that. They've just never gotten around to describe the fields in anything more than an Excel file. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
What's the first major question to them they have to ask themselves?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I know it's late. I'm boring you.
No.
with
You're not. You're not at
later.
all. You're not boring me, Ivo. Not at all. I find this conversation wonderful, and as I often find conversations in data wonderful, I want to continue at a big table with a white napkin and delicious wine and food. But you're in Vienna. I'm in Copenhagen. Can't do that. At least not today, right?
Oh, we did invite you next time.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you did invite
it.
me. Yeah, close but no cigar. I couldn't make it. It didn't add up for my calendar. But thank you very much for the invitation.
Sure.
Thank you. That was very generous of you. No, so I think it really depends on the context, Ivo. I can't take the context out of the question or the setup. So some people, many organizations, they are pushed towards this for compliance reasons. And just as you pointed out, Joseph, the lineage function in that regard is superb, right? Even though lineage is it's a difficult technology, right? No data lineage out there is perfect, and it's very, very difficult. There's some companies that specializes in lineage. I think they're doing a very, very great job, but it's very difficult, right? Because it's a little bit like electricity. It depends on a lot of stuff, right? It's not. Anyway, it's a long story, and that's for another talk. But I think it depends on the context. So some people will be motivated by compliance or regulations in general. That is one aspect of it. Also, I really think and believe that innovation is a big driver in this. I mean, you want to have your the very highly paid employees in the company. You want to have them be able of browsing all the data that you have so that they can elaborate machine learning, artificial intelligence, and so on those data sources. And they need to be able to discover them and access them. And that is also something that data catalog will deliver. And so basically, I think those are the main reasons to consider purchasing a data catalog. I would be a little hesitant though if I was to only apply a data catalog in a compliance context. I think it is.
That's a very good point, by the way.
Yeah,
a very, very practical point that we could take and say you have to figure out how to get the maximum business value out of it, even if through an audit finding, through whatever compliance reason you always had on your backlog, you're pushed to go through this project. Yeah. Very good point.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking for the time flies quickly, and I know we can, if we sit together, we could discuss go down 10,000 rabbit holes.
Love to
on interesting topics of common interest. Josef, maybe you can ask a few questions, and then we can wrap this up. We've been going for an hour, 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, maybe one last point from my side. When I understood you right, what you said about the technology of the data catalog, then it's just to make the point, it's the two success factors of such a data catalog. One, the vendor brings a powerful search engine, and two, the customer or the company which is building up the data catalog is bringing the content. And these are more or less the 2 points. Did I understood you right in this point?
I think so. Let me see if I can remember. I think that yeah, Josef. Basically, I think the main problem with implementing a data catalog is not, or rarely at least, the technology. It is the data
Yeah.
culture of the company. That is the big joker. If your data culture is low, which it typically is when you want to implement the data catalog, then you will face difficulties. And that is not something like the vendor can choose different tricks to try to help you with that. One of them is the use case approach, where you grow your data catalog organically. You will be doing that anyway. And then, yeah, so that is right. There is this distinction. I mean, it's a little. Of course, you can blame technologies for a lot of stuff, but it is a little. I think it's a little easy to say that it's because of the technology that the project was a failure, right? Because it is in most cases the
Yeah.
data culture of the company.
Right. I actually we just had a podcast with Mario Meyerhuber, who is a researcher and especially around data strategy, data culture, author of this handbook, Data and AI book. So I just uploaded it the other day, so I haven't even had the time to put the post on LinkedIn that there's a new episode. But he talks just about that, about data culture, on this episode. And you're fully right that it's actually a very interesting element that if you're thinking about a data catalog, that means your data culture is low and not high. Because if you were high, you already have one. So
Yeah.
there, you cannot. You have essentially that's a very good point. That's indicative of saying we can't go about and explain how data driven we are if we haven't even gotten around up until this point to do a data catalog. And we cannot jump from basically from from crawling to running. We have to learn how to walk first, and this is kind of the step one, right? So you
Exactly.
have to go through this process, and there's no quick shortcut, silver bullet solution to it. So that's also a fine observation. Let me ask you one thing. We like I said, the book we're very excited about it. I'll post a link to for people to get your book from Amazon. The As an author, you said you're not looking. Apparently, it was a difficult process to writing this book, and I can fully understand with working a full-time job and writing a book. But do you have time to read books? I was interested in what would a person like you be reading, because you're definitely reading some books. Can you share maybe some?
Definitely, of course I can. So so the book I'm reading right now is actually the book that was written when my current company turned 150 years old, and it's a completely fascinating story. It is a technology book, but it's just like it's a history book. And what's so cool about it is that I upskill my business literacy. It's something that I've heard. One of my good friends talk about a lot on LinkedIn. And also in reality, we have met like physically, but this idea that everyone should be data literate is something that we of course need to respect. And I think it's not a bad idea, but he kind of flip-flopped it, and there's this entire group that flip-flopped this and said, okay, I think data people need to be business literate. And I think it's quite important that we become that pretty fast, because if not, they are going to fire us first, because we do not deliver the value that we should. None of us do. And we are highly paid. And so we have to understand the business to better provide services to that business. And that, I think, I just decided to do that. So I'm reading a lot on the business, on the history of the company I'm in. It's a 400 pages book, so I've been doing it for a short while now. But prior to that, I have read data books. So I have read like Data Management at Scale from Piet-Hein Strenghold, from O'Reilly, but written by Piet-Hein Strenghold. A really cool book. I've been reviewing the second edition. I highly recommend you to read the second edition. it's one of those books where you can see that the second edition is not just like to sell more books because it's a new edition. There is thoroughly editions being made to this book. It's a very, very good read, and it is even more like logic and practical than the first edition. It goes much more into depth about how to think about domain-based architectures at a scalable approach. So yeah, that's a very cool book that I have read now twice.
Okay.
Been reading the Data Mesh book also by Jean-Marc Degani, The Fundamentals of Data Engineering by Joe Rice and Matt Hughesley. And prior to that, I was consulting a lot of sources that I used in my own book. So information, scientific classics, such as, for example, the information architecture book. That was a lot of O'Reilly books, but the information architecture book was also published by O'Reilly. It's also known as the Ice Bear book because it has a polar bear on the front cover. Then a lot of information scientific books because I had to reconsult all the theories of like relevance ranking mechanisms, information retrieval query languages, and domain theory, like domain analysis. There's an entire field parallel to domain-driven design that's called domain analysis from information science, and it's really good and it's needed in this data discussion. So I included it in the book, and I've been reading about that. Yeah, a ton of stuff. I read a ton of data books. Yeah.
It's just that was a wrong question because in order for you to compile, you're basically trying to synthesize so much on this field, which would enable you to read and build upon all of this existing knowledge. So it's a very, very interesting undertaking. We're looking forward to reading a book.
Thank you.
And we wrap this up. Thank you so much for being our guest, and we'll stay in touch. I would like to just add a remark. Thanks, Josef, for visiting me in the office here and being part of this discussion. And also, Ole, I could just say that the LinkedIn data community is amazing. There's some so interesting folks. This year we plan meeting more people in person at events, and in conferences. It's going to be a very good year for data, and you mentioned the downturn. I think it's just a huge opportunity to realign the priorities and to just refocus. We've seen so many disefficiencies in businesses and how they use data, and from my side, I only see opportunities there to just improve things. Right, so there's just a very I guess optimistic, positive way of looking at these opportunities. And thanks so much, and we'll be in touch, and thank you for being part of this. Bye everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure to join the discussion.
Bye.
You too, Josef. Yes.